Welcome back, everybody, to Between Two Sermons. So great to have you back here with us, and so great to be alongside of you again,
we're
Rob.
back.
Yes,
After a break.
That's right. 2 weeks of a break.
yeah.
So it's great to be back with you. And let's dive right into it, everybody.
Okay.
Daniel chapter 10. That's where we're at. Daniel chapter 10. We're in this section of Daniel that's apocalyptic literature, and can be kind of freaky.
Yeah. Can be.
But I like how you broke this down for us this week, Rob, because you get apocalyptic literature is supposed to show us something
It's supposed
about
to help
God.
us,
Right.
not make it harder, right? That's right.
Right. It's supposed to give us a vision of who God is. And I think this picture really from this chapter does a wonderful job of that. And I liked how you called out a specific portion of that right from the beginning. I think your first point of this whole thing is God is a warrior.
Yeah. And I'm being a little provocative or trying to make us think.
Yeah.
In the sense of when you hear that statement, if you didn't hear anything before it or after it would sound negative, right? That doesn't sound so good. But I think the passage, as you said, the imagery that the writer, is doing, and as Daniel saw and is recorded, is very warrior-like. And I mentioned, and it's important for us to understand the literature. These are images. His eyes were like torches. His voice was like the sound of a multitude. Yeah. So they're not actually a picture of God, right? God is we don't see God in one way, or it's not something you hang on the wall, but it's trying to evoke greater truths about God. And certainly the truth would be, one would say, and I read the book of Revelation, which is very similar. I think they're meant to tie each other. That God is, in this case, seen as a warrior. Again, and what he's fighting, though, which is what's so central to the metaphor, is he's fighting evil. Just like on the cross he fought, the consequences of evil in dying for our sin. He's not, he's not Alexander the Great. He's not George Patton.
Right.
He's a mighty warrior who and his angels are fighting evil and sin that is at work. It's hard to grasp, and it sobers Daniel, right? And as it would you and me if we were not just to think about it today, but if we were living the days of Daniel or living that chapter as Daniel. It's a very sobering thing. And even though we all don't have that experience, I think we're meant to slow down and say, this is reality.
Right.
And it can be both sobering but also encouraging.
Yeah. And I think the portion of that you helped us unpack a little bit is kind of what Ephesians 6 talks about.
Exactly.
This really isn't a battle against flesh and blood.
That's right.
This is a battle against the forces of darkness.
That's right.
That are there.
Yeah,
That's
it.
The principalities, I think it was what Paul calls it in Ephesians.
That's right.
And for a lot of us, I think that reality, we can go through our day without recognizing that reality.
Totally.
Put it that way.
And I think that's the key. You just said it. I think if there's a real practical thing, sometimes many pastors don't, and I haven't, they skip the second half of Daniel because it's too confusing or it's difficult or it's meant for a Bible study, not for a sermon. But I think that's the key. The reason of doing it is because it is part of our reality.
Yeah.
And we as Christians would be remiss and foolish and really harm ourselves almost, certainly not help ourselves by not recognizing that we live, even though you and I are sitting in chairs and we live in this sort of material world, which is also real. There's a true spiritual reality that is every bit as real. And there's many moments, Daniel 10 is just one, but Old Testament and New, as you mentioned, Ephesians 6, that the Bible is trying to remind us that there's a spiritual reality. And that reality is no less real than the material world. And it's part of the way we ought to see our lives and understand our lives. And maybe doing that, one, is helpful because it makes things to some degree more understandable, and it's tapping into, as Daniel did, it's not all negative. It's not just, there's negative things out there. There's positive. Even I mentioned Jesus, which was not in Daniel 10, but when he says on the, eve of his crucifixion, he said to his disciples, if I wanted to, I could call 12 legions of angels, which he didn't because he wanted to die for our sins, but he's making a point.
Right.
He's saying my reality is I understand there's a spiritual reality, and it's yes, there's some darkness and evil in this season of the human history and God's planning, but there's great good and angels, and they're at our they serve us,
Yes,
as it did in Daniel.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how much all of you think we're really prepared when we come into these discussions. So some of these questions are just totally off the fly. So just to let you know. That's right. But what was a point in which you have realized, or are there any instances as you can think about it, where this idea of being in a spiritual battle has really sunk in for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the first thing that comes to mind is, I think of the New Testament. There's 3 or 4 times when the writers of the New Testament say, we are not ignorant of the devil's schemes. And so that's not Old Testament. It shows you it's across the board. And a couple of them surprised me as I've read, and I've seen them in my own life. 2, right off the top of my head. Unforgiveness. I think it's in 2 Corinthians. He talks about the importance of forgiving a brother who sinned, and he says, we are not ignorant of the devil's schemes, after he says, you need to forgive him and don't hold it against him. And I thought, wow. And then there's another time in Ephesians where it says, do not let the sun go down upon your anger, for we are not evil of the devil's ways. And so I would say, that's not so much, the things that we would go right to, like, wars or drugs or all those things that are also maybe evidences of evil. But in my own life, I think I see where the devil, as I understand it in the New Testament, he works in our lives. He can't steal our salvation. He can't undo what Christ has done for us, but he can magnify the weaknesses. He's that intelligent. And let's say you and I have a dispute. And I might even be right. I don't know. But that sense of conflict, the devil knows me well enough that he can work in my heart, however he does it. So it's very beyond our understanding, to make me righteous in some way, arrogant in some way, not unforgiving. And I would say that's perhaps the way I would say the first thing that comes to mind.
That's a wonderful example of it. I think that's makes it very practical for everybody. Because, what is it? 1 Peter, the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking for someone to devour.
Verse. Wow.
It's like, wow, that's real.
That's right.
The devil is real. He's active, and there's a way to fight the devil, but it's not our own strength. It's not through our own power to resist him and just suck it up and do it. It's relying on God.
And back to Daniel 10. I mean, that's really where this goes, right? Daniel, who we admire him. He's not perfect, but we admire him. We've grown to admire him, not only in this series, but as Christians over time, because he gets these things. Let's say he's very wise and he's been faithful all these years, and he's seeing what you and I just got done talking about. What does he do? He spends 3 weeks fasting and praying.
Right.
Okay. He doesn't try to hatch a plot to kill the king or something.
Right.
I mean, he realizes. The fact, the picture that is really painted of Daniel in Daniel chapter 10 is a picture of weakness and exhaustion. It's really weakness. I mean, there's 2 or 3 times where this angel or whoever it is has to come and give him strength, spiritual strength. It doesn't make him a meal, spiritual strength, because this intersecting these greater realities is so frightening. The guys who were with them, or whoever they were, it says they were terrified.
Right.
And Daniel says, I'm speechless, I think one of the verses says. So I think that's a great point. What it teaches us is we are dependent on God. We really cannot live the Christian life with any real success on our own strength at all.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful part of this passage.
Right. I'm impressed, just as I think about the grand scope of Daniel's life, that he has these increasing, God reveals a little bit more to him, a little bit more to him, a little bit more to him about who he is over the course of his life.
That's right.
He couldn't have handled probably this vision
of course not.
at 14 or 15 when he first is learning to trust God.
Right.
He's 80 some right now.
Right.
And God says, okay, I'm going to let you in. But even then,
it's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming for him.
Yeah.
And
no, I've thought a lot too. And, when we talk about the Christian church, we're all ministers and the priesthood of all believers. And that's so true.
Mm-hmm.
You and I don't have a special category. We happen to get a paycheck from the church, but that's the main difference. But it did make me think about what it means to be in the ministry, paid or not. If we're serious, if our head's in the game, we're not living, you could easily go through this life, Christian or not, and avoid much of what's going on in the lives of people, in your own heart, in the ups and downs. But to be in the faith, to serve, to be in the ministry one way or another, is to open your eyes, is to engage in these deeper realities, to enter the sufferings, and that's not for the faint of heart.
Right.
And you can't do it all in one day, as you say. But I think what you see in Daniel, and God does exactly what you're saying. He, sort of gently opens the curtain over time, and this is a big curtain.
Yeah. Yeah. So if those of us who want to take this seriously, let's say through this week, we want to say, actually, I want to apply this to my life.
Yeah.
How might it look for us to pray like Daniel this week?
Yeah.
And really believe that God is going to come through.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
I mean, I think as I'm thinking of the passage, I don't have it in front of me, but he says, Daniel, the angels or this being says to him, you've been heard, and the things you've sought to understand, I'm here to reveal to you. And also, so there's a couple things that answer when I think of your question. One is, what do I need to understand? It could be about big things like, what's going on in the world, but it could be about my own life. Everything's not so quick and obvious. So one, we could really, even write it down if you need to. Where are you really struggling? I mean, honest with yourself. I'm not talking about you're struggling with, something we all struggle with necessarily. Like, I wish I made more money, but I mean, what are your spiritual struggles or your questions about God? That's what Daniel has too, about how God's organizing the world, and what are they?
Yeah,
and we should pray about them. We should share our questions. So that would be one. Two is, what you really see Daniel doing in those opening verses is self-denial, okay, in a kind of a way, right? Jesus says, he that finds his life shall lose it. He that loses his life. That's a summary verse of spiritual growth. But Daniel says, I took a point, really fasting of a kind. There's more than one way to fast. But he says, I didn't eat these special foods. I didn't put on lotions, which for in his case might mean I didn't, I wasn't doing the things I normally do. And I wasn't taking that kind of, more everyday care of myself or present myself in a certain way. I really wanted to focus on hearing from God. So I would say one is, make a list. Think about what's really, where do you need to hear from God? That's what he did. What's troubling you in your walk with God, or in the way you try to make sense of the world? And are you willing to deny yourself? Not because you're earning favor. Fasting is not earning chips with God. It's whatever kind of fasting it is, from TV, from food, from whatever. It's really just trying to focus your attention. And what a powerful thing when that angel said to him, your words have been heard, and I've been sent in response. I mean, wow.
Yes.
So I think those are some things I would think of.
Yeah, I love those. Those are really practical ways, I think, to apply the passage this week. And as I think about all of us, I think that first one really, if in the context of your group, is a great one to start to discuss, or even if you're by yourself, to just start, as Rob said, maybe even write down in a journal. Yeah. What are your real struggles?
Yeah.
What are the places in this spiritual battle that you are most vulnerable, maybe. And what are your questions? And be honest about those things, because when we bring things into the light, that's where God can meet us, when we bring things into the light. So thanks again, Rob. Appreciate you bringing the word to us this week. Looking forward to
one more
chapter
to go.
11. I know. There we go. Next week.
One more.
All right. And we'll catch you all next week here on Between Two Sermons.